Hi everyone. So today we are going to discuss about Splunk Search Head Clustering. In our previous videos, we have seen about what's the indexer clustering, how to implement it, what's the benefits of indexer clustering. Then we tried to implement both in single-site indexer clustering as well as the multi-site indexer clustering. So by now you know at least what does it mean clustering, right? So clustering is nothing, it's just grouping the multiple servers to act as a one server logically, right? So that's what clustering means, and that's what we saw during indexer clustering as well. That we were trying to clone the data, like the data which is being ingested to Splunk. We try to have a multiple copies of those data. So in case if we lose the access to one of the servers, one of the indexers, uh, we are still not going to lose our data, right? So ultimately the goal was to have the data even in case we lose our access, or in fact if the server crashed, or even due to disaster recovery, if anything happens to our infra, we are still going to have our data safe, right? So that's what we did during indexer clustering. Now coming to search head clustering, so it's, though both the concepts are different altogether, indexer clustering and search head clustering, but the underlying fundamental remains same. So in the search head clustering, again, like since it's a clustering, so which means we are going to have multiple copies of our search head artifacts. So artifacts means what? Like whatever saved searches you create in your Splunk search head, right? So in search head clustering, we will see like how we can keep the multiple copies of those artifacts. So in case if we lose the access to one of the search head members, we are still going to have our searches saved and our scheduled jobs running without any issues, right? So in this session, we are going to discuss about what's search head clustering, benefits of search head clustering, key components, and then like some key requirements. I mean, obviously, there are a lot many things you need to take care when you are working on search head clustering, but I will just walk you through on the key requirements. Then how to access the search head cluster, and then finally I will walk you through on like how to deploy the search head cluster. Fine. So just be with me, watch it completely, and then by the end of this video, I'm sure you will have the clear understanding of search head clustering and then how to implement it. Okay, so let's begin. So if you see here, what is search head cluster? So as I said, a group of Splunk search heads, right? You have seen search heads by now, right? So how it looks, what all you can do in the search head. So a group of search heads which share configurations, right? Configurations, knowledge objects, nothing like the saved searches. You configure alerts, reports, dashboards. So those are your knowledge objects, or even the lookups. Like so, those are your knowledge objects, right? So group of Splunk servers which share all these things like configurations, knowledge objects, and even for the workload as well. You can manage your workload efficiently using the search head clustering. So the ultimate idea is you can run the same searches, view the same dashboard, schedule same reports from any of the members part of the search head clustering. That's the ultimate goal we are going to achieve using the search head clustering, right? So, and then if you see the benefits, right? So obviously the high availability, because you will have multiple search heads uh, serving as so you will have multiple components serving the same requirements, right? So because you have cloning of the artifact, so even if the one search head is unavailable, you are unable to access it, your searches will remain unaffected. Those will uh, uh, run as configured without having any impact on the environment. Then scalability becomes easy. So, like as your organization grows, as the data ingestion grows in your Splunk environment, you can easily scale your Splunk search head clustering by adding another instance to the clustering, right? So that's another benefit. Load balancing, obviously, you can do a better load balancing. So we will see, like during next slide when we will discuss about how to access the search head cluster, I will tell you more about balancing the load. So that load balancing you can do, then uh, redundancy obviously, because you will have multiple copies of your knowledge object. So you are not going to lose access to your search artifacts knowledge objects. It provides you the redundancy. So I mean, just to give you an example, suppose you are working on any of the Splunk projects which is handling financial data of a bank or any crucial data, right? So, and then those searches becomes those searches or any other dashboards, reports, like maybe you have configured a dashboard or report to monitor business KPIs, maybe for your senior management, right? So, if you just have one search head member, and if that search head member goes down, or if the instance crashes out, right, you are going to lose all your saved searches dashboards, right? So that becomes critical here, right? So in those cases, it's recommended, I mean, in production always it's recommended to have the search head clustering implemented, because you never know, like, I mean, you can't simply rely just on one instance, right? So that's the reason we configure the search head clustering. Now, coming to the next slide. So if you see the benefits, like we already tried to cover up, but if you see the main benefits here, so you can see, right, high availability, because you are going to have redundancy of your artifacts, load balancing. So how you can manage the load, scalability, we can easily scale your environment by adding new search head members to your cluster. Then replication we already discussed. So ultimately it provides you lot many benefits when you implement search head clustering. Horizontal scaling, it provides you, so as the number of users or the search load increases, you can add new search heads to the cluster. So I think, yeah, these are the main benefits you get when you implement the search head clustering. Okay. Here I have put in one small diagram, like how the clustering looks actually. So here you can see you have, so this is the diagram, shows you three search head members here, right? 1, 2, and 3. So there are three search head cluster members, and then you have the deployer. We will discuss about all these terms. And then one of these members will be acting as a captain. So search heads, obviously you know search heads. These are the individual Splunk search head. So these, by combining these individual search head members, you form the cluster, right? Because you are trying to bring them together to share the job scheduling, search artifacts, configurations, right? Then captain, what captain does actually? So among these members, like which are part of your cluster, one of your cluster member will act as a captain, right? And just to make sure, there will be just, okay, just make sure there will be just one captain at a time. Just make sure, it's an important point actually. There can't be more than one captain in your search head clustering. So if for example, if this captain crashes, right, if it goes out of your clustering, any of the other members in the clustering will automatically elected as a next captain in the clustering. So that's how it works actually. Now, to discuss the role of the captain. So captain's main job is to coordinate job scheduling, because for example, if you have three search head members, right? So now it's captain's responsibility to coordinate the job scheduling among all those members, replicate the activities across all members. For example, you created one alert here, right? So now it's captain's responsibility to replicate this alert to all other search head cluster members. Now the next thing we are going to discuss about deployer. So deployer, okay, so here it is deployer, right? So what deployer does, like in your search heads, you might have tried configuring the add-ons or apps or maybe any other custom apps, custom configurations, right? But once you implement the search head clustering, It's not the way to deploy the add-ons or applications or custom configs in your search heads manually while logging to each member separately. That's not the way forward once you implement the search head clustering, because the reason is it can create the conflicts, right? You might configure something here in the search head member 1, you might configure something here in the search head member 2, so that will create the conflict, and that can lead to the issues wherein your clustering will not function as expected. So now the deployer role comes in picture. What deployer does? Whatever app, add-on or custom config you need to post, you will be doing it using the deployer. So you need to configure one instance as a deployer, and just make sure that deployer is not among these members. Just make sure these are the important points actually. So suppose you have 3 members, right, in your search head clustering. Your deployer can't share the role between these members. However, in some cases, like if you don't have that big infra, you can share your deployer with the deployment server or license manager or cluster master. You can share this role with any of these components, but not with the search head cluster members. Okay, and we will see like how to configure the deployer. So now you know like what's the use of deployer, right? To push the configurations apps to your search head cluster members. Fine. So, and then you can see here your search head cluster is integrated with search members. That's the indexer clustering layer. And then the load balancing we were discussing in the previous slide. So I will put on more info on this in the next slides. Okay, so moving to the next slide. Now you see the summary of key requirements. So to configure the search head clustering, these are few key requirements you need to make sure. Obviously, there are a lot many, so I would recommend you going through the Splunk's official documents once. But these are the main key requirements when you are implementing the search head clustering. Okay, so all the first point if you see here, all search head cluster members and the deployer must run on the same. So you just need to make sure that all your members and even the deployer in the search head clustering are running on the same OS and version. Similarly, the Splunk version running on these instances should be same. And when we discuss more on the Splunk upgrade in our next video, you will know like what like which Splunk version, which instance can run on the higher version, right? So obviously, just to give you an idea. Okay, so for example, your deployer, right? So your deployer can be on the higher version than your search head members. So whatever your search head cluster members running on, your deployer can be on the higher version than your members or with the same version. So that's one of the key requirements. You can't have your search head cluster members running on the higher version than your deployer. So you need to make sure when working on the Splunk upgrade. And then the one main important point you need to make sure when you are implementing the search head clustering, there should be minimum of 3 members in your search head clustering. Okay. Now coming to the next slide, how to access the search head cluster, right? So obviously, like for example, if you have 3 search head cluster members, right? So users can access any of those members and they will be able to see all the data, all the artifacts, because the member is part of the cluster now. So whatever you configure in, or like the configs or apps add-ons you will be pushing using the deployer, and the manual searches or whatever configs like reports, alerts, dashboards, lookups, anything you create manually on one of the members, that will be replicated to all other members, right? That's the job of the captain we discussed in previous slide. So users can access any of the members and they will be able to see all the search artifacts. Now, however, it's recommended to use the load balancer. So, for example, if you have sh, okay, sorry, you have sh1, sh2, sh3, right? So what's recommended? You configure the load balancer. and then let your users connect to your search head clustering using this load balancer. So you can configure DNS or something, right? You can give them the URL and then they can hit this URL and that will take them, that request will end up to any of these members. So this load balancer can efficiently manage that workload, right? It will know like where to redirect the load. So there are a lot many things to configure the load balancing based on the reason, the load on the members, what's the resource utilization. So based on those things, you can configure load balancing, and then this load balancer will manage the uh, load efficiently on all your members part of the cluster. Okay, so that's the use of search head clustering, and it's always recommended to configure the load balancing before allowing your users to hit search head cluster members, because it's not advisable recommended to give them the individual search head cluster members URL to let them access. The reason is, for example, if you give any of the users URL or the host name or IP of this instance, right? He or she will be able to access this instance. He will be able to see all the artifacts. That's fine. But what if this instance goes down? If it's out of the clustering, if it's out of the network, then the request will fail, right? So that's the reason where you configure the load balancing, provide your users with the URL or the whatever web domain you have, and then let them access your search head clustering. Okay, now coming to like how to deploy the search head clustering. So there are very few steps you need to take care. You need to set up the deployer. So we already discussed about all these components in search head clustering. Individual search heads you need to configure. You need to install a Splunk, and then you need to invoke SHC initialization command that we will see in the next slide. Bring up your captain, because you need the captain to manage the job scheduling replication of artifacts across all your cluster members. And then deployer. So deployer you need to push the configurations, add-ons, and apps, right? Okay, so now here are the steps to configure the deployer. It's very straightforward. You just need to add this stanza in your server.conf. So in your server.conf, you just need to add this sh clustering stanza. Password, it's the passcode, and you need to make sure that you use the same security key, whatever you are defining here, to let your members communicate with each other and to communicate with the deployer. So you need to pass the same passkey there. Label, you can define anything, and as I said during indexer clustering implementation, it's useful for the monitoring when you configure the monitoring console. So once your deployer is configured, you need to configure your individual search head members. So this is the command you need to execute on all your search head cluster members. Basically the Splunk individual search heads, which you are going to make them the part of the search head clustering. So you need to initiate the sh clustering config, need to provide username password, and then so this sh host, right? This is nothing, it's the same instance host name or IP, like on which you are executing this script. It's not like you need to provide any other instance IP or host name here. It's going to be the same instance host name IP where you are executing. So for example, if you are executing it on your SH1, you need to provide SH1 IP here. Replication port 8080. This is required to replicate the artifacts across all your search head cluster members. Replication factor, it's not mandatory component, it's optional. So even if you do not define it, the default replication factor is 3. And then conf deploy fetch URL. So this one you can execute, you can include when you are firstly initializing your SH clustering on the member, or you can configure it later as well. So deployer host, whatever deployer you have configured, you need to pass the deployer IP here, because your search head cluster member has to pull the configs from your deployer, right? So for that you need to define the deployer host. Then the management port that you already know, 8089, and then the clustering label. So whatever you want, you can define that. After initializing the clustering on all your members, now your job is to bring up the captain, right? So bootstrap the captain. because you need the captain now for the replication of for the management of job scheduling, and then the replication of your saved searches artifacts, right, across all your members in the cluster. So to bring up the captain, you just need to run this command on the instance. Just make sure you need to run it on the instance which you want to configure it as a captain. You just need to make sure this, and you need to pass all your members IPs and management port here along with username password. So as soon as you execute this command on the instance which you want to act as a captain in beginning, that instance will start acting as a captain, right? And as I said, if the captain goes down due to any reason XYZ, another instance in the clustering will come up and like all the members. So basically, there is a election actually to elect the captain. So if the captain, the current running captain goes down due to any reason, the other members in the cluster will come up and will elect their new captain. And lastly, using the deployer, you can push the configs to your search head cluster members. So that's the straightforward command you need to execute on your deployer to push the configs to your members. So that's how the search head clustering works. And I mean, it's not limited to what we are trying to cover up in this slide today, because lot many things are there. I might not be covering everything. I might have missing adding few important details, right? So if you feel like that, I mean, you can obviously let me know in the comment box. I will, and if you need me to cover up more on anything on the search head clustering, I will obviously do that. But just make sure that I will be coming up with the next video in the next few days with the search head clustering implementation, like a step by step implementation, how to do that. So that we will see in the next video. But I will also request you to go through the Splunk's official documents on search head clustering, what's the use of it, benefits, how to configure it. So maybe anything that we might have missed covering in this video, you will get to know by going through the Splunk's official documents. So I think that's it for this session. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.